guys, welcome to our second video of our David collection, which we are actually calling the David Diaries.
Hey friend, hey, week 2. I'm super excited about this story because it's so fun. It's a little bit less drama than last week, but still drama because, you know, it's David.
Yes, and I love young David and seeing him truly grow as a person and as a leader. He has proved to me and all of us young adults that young people can make good leaders.
Yeah, he was a different breed. Much more of the David that I love than the one we talked about last week.
Yeah, I love seeing how David evolves as time goes on in his journey with God. So, friend, you had said you wanted to start at the beginning. How far back are we going?
Let me first apologize for my refrigerator that sometimes makes noises. If you hear it out throughout the video, sorry about that. But before I go there, I wanted to remind everyone that we had a video drop last week on this very channel. You can go to our channel link and find the video David and Bathsheba. It's the first video in our series about David, and you can watch the videos out of order, but you might not get all the jokes, but it's there. Go check it out. We had a great time making it. Anyway, back to David and where we are now. I think we're going to go back all the way to the beginning, or as Pumbaa says, when I was a young warthog.
Whoa. Before you get into it, what do we do here at Unfiltered, friend, for everyone who doesn't know or is just joining us?
Well, Melissa, I'm glad you asked. Here at Unfiltered, we make weekly scripted videos geared towards young adults about Bible topics, spiritual things going on. We're so excited to have you here.
We are really excited to be continuing our David collection and seeing how David even got into a leadership position in the first place. So, friend, these are actually the cliche Bible David stories. So, what spiritual or biblical point did you have in mind?
Today we'll be talking about when David was a young leader and some of the struggles he had early on being a leader. We'll talk about how his support system became non-existent through his trials, and how that really colors some of the stories that we might already know as young adult Christians.
Okay, well, I wouldn't say non-existent because he did still have people who were very loyal to him for most of his life. But yeah, David did struggle with people doubting him at every turn. His dad, his brothers, the king, lots of people were doubting him. I wouldn't say against him, but they were definitely doubting him at every single turn.
I still say non-existent. But anyway, Melissa and I almost titled this video David and His Brothers. We get into some really heated arguments between David and his older brother, and that's only part of the reason why his support system falls apart. But that being said, I'm so excited to dig in.
So I guess we should start off by saying that Saul is the current king of Israel, and Saul is of the tribe of Benjamin. And David is the son of Jesse, and he's actually the youngest of 8 sons. 8 sons.
Can we just stop for a second and talk about having 8 kids? Do we know if Jesse had any daughters? Because that's so many kids without any paid meds or birth control. Truly, dark times.
Actually, it's really funny that you mentioned that because not only did he have his 8 sons, he also had 2 daughters. And I'm sorry if I mess up their names. One was named Abigail and the other one was called Zeruiah. And I'm going to put that down on the screen so you can see how it's actually spelled in case I completely butchered it. But as weird as that might be for us today, back then, huge families were super common. And sometimes even the men of that time would have even multiple wives.
Which I know you're a fan of, Melissa. Sister wives and all. But back to the history for a second. David was the youngest of 8 brothers, which means that he was given chores as we did. My chores growing up were doing dishes. I'm sure you guys had chores and you can relate. But David's task was taking care of the sheep that his family owed. It's a big task. And Melissa, when we were sitting down writing the script, I know that you talked about how you feel like that prepared David for a lot of the leadership in his life.
Yeah, and I think I said this out of experience because I'm from the Southwest and being connected to the mountains, man, and nature, I think it just really helped to ground him and give him the peace and calm that he really needed to really connect with God and give him that firm foundation, like spiritual and relationship foundation with God that he really needed to be future king.
So friend, spoiler alert, I was building up suspense. So anyway, as my dear friend Melissa has spoiled, David is chosen to be king. So basically what happens is one of God's prophets, Samuel, one of his messengers, was sent to Jesse's house to find the next king. Jesse was David's father, and I think we've already said that, but just in case. But this was super weird for Jesse, right, Melissa? Because there was already a king chosen.
I think this is just a bizarre situation where everyone's just so casual about it. Israel already has a king, and Samuel just shows up and he's like, hey, Jesse, can I just see your sons? Because we're gonna choose a new king. Like, there's already a king in Israel. Why are you looking for a new king? And no one's questioning anything. And we're just rolling with it. Casual.
So you're just not gonna apologize to our viewers for spoiling that? Oh, okay. We can just move on. You know what? You're like those people in the Avengers movie that say that. Yep, that's you.
Oh, you're actually feeling some type of way about this.
I'll get over it. Anyway, the hunt was on for the next king. So, Jesse brings forward 7 sons. But wait, doesn't Jesse have 8 sons? I said 7. He has 8 sons, right, Melissa?
Yeah, and actually it's funny because we see Samuel kind of enter into this struggle with God, because as he's walking down the line of these 7 sons that Jesse put on display for him, Samuel thinks all of them look king-like, and God keeps telling him to move on to the next one, man. It's almost like Miss Universe, but for the king position. Yeah. And finally, when Samuel gets down to the end of the line, he looks at Jesse and he's like, dude, you got any more in the back? Like, none of these are gonna do, but I know the king is here.
Thus appears the hero in the making, David. It's truly one of those movie moments that reminds me that the Bible is so good at telling stories. I picture this moment of David coming from taking care of sheep, dirty, unprepared for this role, walking strongly in his stride because he's confident in God, ready to be anointed and crowned king.
Actually, friend, Samuel demanded that David be brought in. He literally told Jesse and everyone in the house, we will not sit down until the young boy comes in. And yeah, he was anointed. And this actually started a whole set of complications for David in his early years, which we are going to cover in this video.
Complications, you say? Do you mean like working for your best friend's dad, whose job you will one day have, he just doesn't know it yet, type of complications?
Yeah, and I guess marrying into that family full of crazy. That's a good point.
David begins working for the king because get this kid also plays the harp, and it turns out that his harp playing is the only thing that calms King Saul when he has dark spirits around him. It's amazing. And you would think this kid gets out of doing the dishes because he works for the king. But does he, Melissa? Does he?
No, the poor kid. He had to go and play the harp for the crazy king and still come back to tend the sheep for his dad.
As many moms used to say, you can go ahead and have that little job. These dishes still need to get done. The war starts and Saul goes out to war. And he chooses to go to war because he has the absolute right to, because he's the king and he has the authority to make that decision. Right, Melissa?
Okay, I thought we were past that, friend. And yes, after we see prime example number 1 of David being doubted by all of his family because his dad brought him out last when they were talking about kings and anointings, we see prime example numero 2.
David was given a message from his dad to take to his brothers. He was being a good younger brother. And then things start to get a little bit crazy. Before we get into the next part though, I want to explicitly state that David had a wild prayer life with God. It helps explain this part a little bit more, so it seems less like David is going insane. Anyway, Melissa, do you want to tell them about Goliath?
Ooh, yes, Goliath. So I'm really tiny, I'm like 5'1". Goliath was this massive guy, like just big. I imagine like a big, beefy, just giant guy. And he was from Gath, and he was actually fighting for the Philistines. He was essentially a big bully. And Goliath would stand there and pretty much just taunt the Israelites and be like, send out your best warrior. That is my best Goliath voice, by the way. And David got really upset, and he was like, who is over here taunting and teasing the armies of God?
So David starts talking to his older brother about the war, and his brother acts like every Disney Channel brother ever and starts to go off on him. This seems like a bad idea, like understanding how fights work and things. Like, I wouldn't get into a fist fight with Mike Tyson because he's like professionally good at that. So why would David's brother, knowing that he's good with words, try to beat him with words? It's not a good idea.
Well, and honestly, we see Eliab here as kind of a grouch because he is trying to put David in his place for trying to get everyone else to do something about Goliath teasing and taunting the armies of God. He almost thought that he had no place being there. But, not to fear, David doesn't let it get to him. He goes marching off to the king himself.
I mean, I kind of see your point, but anybody that close to the king, calming him down with their musical instruments, the king has to trust.
Okay, but regardless of David working in the court, he was still just a harp player. So I'm sure Eliab still saw him as his pipsqueak little brother.
I mean, I guess I hear what you're saying, friend, but he was the king's calm person. Like, he was brought in to calm down the king. And anybody that close to the king has to trust with certain information. I'm just saying, I think he had to have some knowledge. Anyway, David and Saul went back and forth a little bit until they come to a conclusion, and Saul says yes. And it kind of is interesting how this all plays out because of the end of this video, but we'll get there.
It's not like David really mentions his brothers to the king. Yeah, and it's funny because we actually see King Saul here trying to be the Tony Stark to his Spider-Man, and we see him trying to upgrade his power suit and give him his own armor. And David tries it on, and he's like, dude, this isn't me. What are you doing? So he takes all of it off, and he goes out with his tiny little shepherd's rod. And he goes out with his tiny little shepherd's sling.
With his 3 stones...
Okay, whoa. He grabs 5, only uses 1.
I love it so much when my teacher friend corrects me in the video instead of telling me in the script. He kills Goliath and they live happily ever after. Saul trains David to be king and everything is great. No, this is the Bible, not an episode of Sesame Street. This doesn't have a fun ending.
Yeah, I honestly feel like this is the start of the series of unfortunate events. So backtracking a little bit, part of the story that we didn't mention is that Saul actually had a very special prize for the person who would stand up to Goliath and get rid of him. It was one of his daughter's hands in marriage, because Bible times and all of my feminist everything. Whatever, we're moving on. And let's keep that in mind because he wasn't the only family member of the royal household that he was getting close to. And here, let us introduce the bromance of the millennium.
Jonathan and David. Man, Jonathan is awesome. He supports and prays for David his entire life. Their friendship is truly remarkable. And we'll get into the meat of J and D's relationship over the next couple of weeks, but it's important to know that they were close. Switching gears a little bit, keep this in mind. David has now moved in with Saul. Saul's kind of happy at this point, until the crowds of people in Israel kind of messed things up. How did that song go, Melissa?
Bromance.
Nope, not that one. Not that one.
Oh, never mind.
Also, wouldn't you sing Guy Love from Scrubs? You're obsessed with Scrubs. It's the one where it says Saul would kill...
You mean the one that says Saul has killed thousands and David has killed 10,000s? Yeah, Saul didn't like that song very much and he gets real jelly. And it's so bad that he has a nefarious plan. Well, more like spontaneous crazy plan to get rid of David. So that way he could just relieve all of his David-related anxiety.
Human archery! Yay! For all your summer camp needs, call 1-800-SAUL-KILLS, teaching you how to be the inner Candace Efferdine in your personal Hunger Games issues. Anyway, David is in danger because Saul's literally trying to pin him to the wall.
And here we see David's first love story because Saul figures that if he marries David off to one of his daughters, in this case Michal, that David wouldn't be a problem for him anymore. Right?
This plan is not smart because the people fall in love with David.
Yeah, this kid was the package deal, man. He had charisma, he was humble, he was down to earth, and he led by example. Saul's plan worked until he realized that Michal loved David. And now he was more scared of him than ever before. And in 1 Samuel 19, we see the royal siblings, Jonathan and Michal's loyalties to David both be tested.
This sets off a chain of another series of unfortunate events.
And the topic for our next video.
Saul stupidly tells Jonathan that he's going to kill David. And Jonathan, of course, warns David, Saul, know your people, man. This is your son's best friend. What? Jonathan loved David. He even went as far as asking his dad not to kill him.
And while that solves Saul's problem for a tiny bit, yeah, it continues because he goes off to war, comes back to his wife's house because, well, it's his wife's house.
Wait. Before that, Saul actually tries again to pin him to the wall with the thing, but David ducks because he's awesome.
Oh yeah, details.
David decides at this point it's time to leave town, and boy does he dip.
Yeah, Michal's so awesome. She actually put an idol, fluffed up some stuff, made it like a movie type of thing. She put it in the bed. She tells the guards when they bust down the door, oh yeah, he's sick and sleeping. And she had actually helped him out to escape. So he was long gone by that time.
That's where we leave you this week story-wise. I know it's a bit of a cliffhanger, but you gotta keep the people coming back for more. Anyway, how does this apply to your day-to-day walk? We saw glimpses of this. Leadership is hard. But what's really amazing is that in this part of the story, we saw glimpses of David's leadership and how he'll end up bringing Israel through so much.
Jaren, you and I have actually both been in leadership positions, and we've been around great leaders. And I think it's really awesome how, even through all of this, David still stays true to himself. And yes, I will use this word, and I know you'll make fun of me, but he's organic. And he stays true to himself, and everything from his past, he helps to define himself into the leader that he turns out to be in the present.
Also, family has a huge effect on you. I often wondered why David made a lot of bad decisions, but doing research for this video helped me realize that he didn't always have the best examples. But just because you have a bad family or a bad upbringing doesn't destine you to turmoil. David went on to do amazing things and had a wonderful relationship with God.
Wonderful? Listen, the kid has absolutely no problem throughout his whole life being real and honest with God in literally every single situation.
It's truly amazing to see God's unchanging love with David, the same way he is with David and Bathsheba. When David is doing amazing, God is there. When David is doing awful things, God is there too.
I would even argue that David was closer to God.
I don't know, friend. We'd start to see some complicated colors of David when he's on the run. Fear has the way of bringing out the very best and the very worst of us all at the same time.
You know, that is so true. Not that I can relate, but definitely running for your life, that would bring out the best and the worst in all of us. But what obstacles did David face right away? I guess we mentioned David not really having his family support him.
I'll get to that next week. We gotta leave the people wanting more.
All right. So I guess next week. So David on the run?
I, for one, cannot wait. Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching. We love sharing stories with you and sharing our points of view. I can't wait to share more with you.
Yes, and don't forget to click, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. We love hearing from y'all.
Caves, lying, stealing, chasing,
and pieces of cloth to prove innocence.
all that and more next week. We'll see you later, guys. Bye.